sometimes we'd rather be outside in the nice weather, but some things are important to come in for, and I think this is going to be one of those afternoons. This is Leo and Maureen Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, welcome everybody. Beautiful spring day here in Baldwinsville. I'm going to talk a little bit about things that I remember in the last 50 years in Baldwinsville. And it's ironic that we came here 50 years ago from East Syracuse, moved to Baldwinsville, and retired 30 years later from the Baldwinsville schools. So I've been retired 20 years now from
That's scary.
the school system.
You've been retired longer than I have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, from the school. I worked after that.
You were a very young man when you retired, obviously.
Yes,
Very young.
yes, I was, very young. I'd like to introduce my wife, Maureen, and we've been married 53 years, coming up, and we have 5 children. 2 still live in Baldwinsville, and the other 3 live in all over the country, so we get to go and see them once in a while. Try to get to see them 2 or 3 times a year, but pretty far for some of them. We came to Baldwinsville in the fall of 1964. I was the teacher of physical education and the wrestling coach in East Syracuse. And East Syracuse and Baldwinsville were in the same league. And when we were wrestling over here at Baker High School in Baldwinsville, John Arcaro was the coach of Baldwinsville, and I was the coach of East Syracuse. And after the match, we won, East Syracuse won. This guy named Oat Sennett came across the mat and said, "Hey, you want a job over here?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I don't know." I said, "Are you offering?" He said, "Yeah." So he went and got me an application, and I said, I put it in my pocket. I said, "I'll think about it, and I'll talk to my wife about it." Well, we had 2 girls, and we were the East Syracuse Railroaders, and she said, "You know, I wouldn't mind moving to Baldwinsville. I don't want my girls to be railroaders." I said, "Oh boy."
I wanted them to be bees.
Yeah, we really weren't even the bees then. Bees was just something that the newspaper put in so they didn't have to spell Baldwinsville. It was a B''S, that's how it started. But then we became bees because of that. But so I worked in East Syracuse with a guy named Charlie Kolenkark. And he said, "You're going to go to Beeville, take that job?" He says, "Come on over to my house, I'll sell you a lot." Because he had 20 acres with ponies on them on Colmaine Road. So he took me down and showed me the lots. And I said, "You know, maybe we can build a house on one of these lots." He said, "Yeah." He says, "My next door neighbor is Bob Gates. He built his house and he built my house." So he introduced me to Bob. And Bob said, we worked out a deal, and he said, "Yeah, we can build you a house out there on one of Charlie's lots." So we got the plans. He went over them. He said, "You can't afford this house, you can't afford this, but you can afford this." So we decided to build a house with Bob. And he came and we started school in '64 in September. And Bob started the house. And he had Art Peters, Milk Gross, and he built that house in 6 months. So we moved in February. And
It's still standing, right?
it's still standing.
Yep.
Coming up on 50 years. And so we lived in the country. And when we came to Baldwinsville was a beautiful rural community. And we loved it. But it took forever to get here from East Syracuse because there was no 690, there was no Erie Boulevard, whatever they call it now, you know. And, you know, the thruway didn't have an opening here to come into Baldwinsville, so you had to go down James Street, out Erie Boulevard to State Fair Boulevard, all the way out here to Route 48, Maple Road, and it took forever, you know. And kind of liked that, you know, kind of thought it was good to be out here in the country. And so we lived on the corner of Downer Street and Seneca Street until our house was built. And at that time, our first son was born in that house, Kevin. And then Bob said, you know, I think you're going to be able to move in February. I said, okay. So we moved out of down the street and moved out to the house. I started teaching in Beeville in September of '74, and my job was to be a physical education teacher in various schools. In other words, to give other teachers a period off. So my main assignment was Elizabeth Street School, but they didn't start until 9:30 or 9 or whatever, and so I'd start at 7:30 at Durkee, and I'd teach the first period and give Don Casma off. That was his period off. Second period, I taught for Dorothy Baker, and of course, that was Al Baker's wife, that was her period off. And so I taught the boys the first period, the girls the second period. And my first year, I was like, you know, go get them. You know, I was a young guy and full of vinegar. And so I had a good time teaching the boys. I didn't have any trouble with them because you could swap them then once in a while. You know? And Linda Meyer would come down, or Nostrand would come down and say, those kids get out of line, give them a good kick in the pants, you know. Or Lindy would bounce an eraser off their head or something and say, be good in here. I said, I can handle these guys, you know. I couldn't handle the girls because I never really worked with girls too much. So this one day I'm working in Dorothy's class, and then this girl, I said, now young lady, you got to get dressed. All the girls have to get dressed, have to do your exercises and all this. And she just sat there. And I said, come on, let's get going. The rest of you girls keep moving, keep doing the exercises. I said, come on. I grabbed her by the wrist and said, come on, you got to come out here now. Thought she was shy. She says, hey, get your hands off me, you big jackass. Well, it was a little stronger than that. So I said, oh boy. I said, you know, with the boys, I want to give them a good swat, you know. But with the girl, I just grabbed her and I said, come on, we're going to the principal, right? Dragged her all the way down the hall of Durkee. Went in to Nostrand. He's standing in the hallway and he goes, what's up, Mr. Johnson? I said, this girl just called me a big jackass. He went, how'd she find out so quick? I was so deflated. Here I am taking his breath. And he started laughing. And at the same time, he's going, young lady, get in my office right now. He's going, I got you. He says, I got you. So that was funny, you know. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. But then, about a month or so later, I had a bad incident in my class. We were playing outside the first period. It was a beautiful fall day, and we came in to change. The boys had to change their gym uniforms to go to second period. And one of the boys comes up and says, Mr. Johnson, this boy fell down in the locker room. And I said, okay, so I run out there. Kid's not breathing. And I yelled at Don Casma, call the nurse, call the ambulance, whatever, we need help here. Well, so we started giving him mouth-to-mouth. Lindy came running down from the science department. He was giving me a break, and then I would give him a break. They called Dr. Mignol. He ran over, gave the kid a shot right in the heart, tried to get him around. We tried to call the ambulance, but Ralph was out doing something, and the ambulance then was the hearse. And it took a long time to find Ralph and for him to get there. Well, when he got there, Lindy insisted, I'm going with him. We'll bring him back. So Lindy went in the ambulance in the back and gave the kid mouth-to-mouth all the way to the hospital.
Wow.
Well, it took a long while to get to the hospital because there was no 690. You know, you got to go down 48, and Ralph didn't have a siren on the hearse, so it was a tough situation. Well, after that, we were talking, and Frank O'Donnell says, why don't we join the ambulance corps? So we did. We joined the ambulance corps in 1964. And we ended up getting a used ambulance from someplace, and they parked it someplace down on Elizabeth Street. Down the end, I think Randy's over there now, or roofing or something.
Oh, okay.
And until they could put up a building, not the building we have now,
Oh, yeah.
that's a beautiful building, but
What happened to the kid though?
Yeah, I know.
the boy died, and
Oh.
yeah, and the doctors at the hospital said that he was dead when he fell down on the floor.
Fell down.
He died of natural causes. And we had, I felt terrible, of course,
Oh, yeah.
and we worked with the family they were from the Lutheran church, and they all came to see me and to tell me that it was God's way, and it was nothing to do with gym class or anything else. It just was a natural thing, and it was His time to go to heaven.
Wow.
So, I blessed them. Thank you. They blessed me, and it was a tough situation, but it did bring a lot of us guys into the ambulance corps.
Yeah.
And because we were teachers and coaches and everything else, we couldn't work the ambulance during the day, or we're coaching after school, so we would work nights or weekends. So when I became a team like at midnight, but you could sleep home then. And the police would call you and say, "You've got an ambulance call." So we, race down to the Elizabeth Street, and get in the ambulance, and Frank would say, "I'll be the driver, you be the first aider," or I'll say, "Okay, tonight I'm driving, you're first." So we did that back and forth for quite a while, made the pickups, took them into St. Joe's and everything like that. So one night, got the ambulance call around 2:30 in the morning. "You got to pick up a girl on Lock Street, she's having a baby, okay?" I said, "Okay." Well, so I said, "All right." We get in there, and Frank says, "I'm driving." So,
Good luck, Frank.
yeah. So I got the girl calmed down, she's in the back there and everything else. And I had a clipboard, and he had to take the name and address, and I said, "Okay." I said, "You're going to have this baby. We're going to get you there. Don't worry about it." She says, "I don't know. I said, "Okay, what's your name? What's your husband's name?" "I don't have a husband." I said, "Oh." I said, "All right. Well, we don't know what you're going to have for a baby, but, She says, "Well, what?" She says, "I don't even know what I'm going to have for a name." She says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Frank." And he was going. And finally we got to the state fair, and I said, "Pull over, we're not gonna make it," right?
And
So-
baby Frank was born.
Yeah, the baby was born, and this is funny. And then I put the baby on her tummy and put a blanket over, and we got her in there to St. Joe's. So I'm back teaching at Elizabeth Street about, 8 or 9 years later, and the kid comes up to me and says, "Hi, I'm Frank." And I won't say his last name. He said, "You delivered me." I said, "That's why I was a doctor," I said. So that was a fun. But we had some other good ones that we can't really talk about. But we had some tough situations,
Always on a weekend.
Yeah, always on the weekend.
What would be the point?
Yeah, but then they got serious in this ambulance corps. We of course we all had to be certified in first aid to be a coach anyway. So we just would re-up every year and learn the new techniques and everything else. And then they said, "Well, we're getting to be big time out here in Baldwinsville. We're going to have a building, and you're going to have to sleep over." And that's when she said, "No, you're not going to be sleeping over," because she didn't want to stay out in the country all by herself.
We didn't have neighbors.
Yeah.
No, really, the butchers, but
Yeah.
by the time I got to the butchers, and we used to get knocks on the door
Yeah.
many a night.
Yeah.
Accidents on
I was going to say,
that
safe on Sunday.
Yeah.
terrible
yes,
corner.
yeah, there would be.
And I was not good about staying by myself. Now I'm better. I have an alarm system, but he's not gone, that much without me, so, yeah.
So then the next year, we were in our house 1 year, and we had the blizzard of '66.
Oh, yeah.
And we opened the garage door after 2 or 3 days of snowing, and the snow was right to the top of the garage door. Couldn't get out. You had to dig out, you know. And we, you know, with all the kids, we were running out of milk and bread and things like that. So nobody could get downtown Baldwinsville because the plows couldn't open up the street. It was just too much snow. So after 3 days, this guy comes by on the snowmobile. He says, "Anybody need anything at the store?" I said, "I'll go with you." So we raced down the street, got to Totten's, nothing on the shelves, right? Went around the corner to the Red and White store, which is next to the lock. Well, I don't know what it's called.
No, it's now, it's a.
Canela.
Yeah,
Canela, yeah.
yeah.
And went in there. There wasn't anything on the shelves except a couple of cans of soup and a lot of Worcestershire sauce and ketchup. That was it was bare in there, you know.
Yeah, wow.
So we did the best we can, and then came home, and it took us forever to dig out because we had to do it by hand. You know, people didn't have snow blowers back then. At least we didn't, you know. But it was an amazing thing, and we have some tremendous pictures of that.
I have a little side to that, Leo. We lived on Seneca Street at the time. And I worked at P&C at the time too, which is where the liquor store is now over on.
Wacky Wyatt.
And we went there by snowmobile, and back then you could take cash registers in front, and that's what we did.
Right, put the handle in.
During that storm,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Can't do it now.
You can't do any of that now.
Was that the storm you lost the wrestler?
No.
Oh,
I'm sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to.
No, that's okay.
That's another time.
So then, while I was working with the school sports, the townspeople wanted to start a Pop Warner football team. So they got all these different dads who were just interested fathers, and they tried to have a team, and I'd go to watch the practice because a couple of our little guys wanted to be on the team. And none of the dads had any really experience in organizing kids or the team. So it was like a little chaotic, you know, hey, I want my kid to play here. Well, you know, this guy's got to play there. So finally I talked to Dave Perry, and we decided we'll ask to be the coaches. So we did the coaching of the Pop Warner team for the first 2 years, the Pee-wees. And got them organized, you know, they made them show up to practice. You had to put your helmet on and strap it on, all that good stuff. And they had a good time playing and going around to the different towns. At the same time, I got involved with the Cub Scouts. Because all the boys wanted to go to Cub Scouts, you had to drive there anyway. So George Host says, "Why don't you help me?" I said, "Well, okay," you know, so we did that. And geez, we would go to campouts and cookouts and things like that. And Cub Scouts are much smaller than Boy Scouts, so when they go to sleep at night in the tent over at Highland Park or Highland Forest, they're scared to death. You know, they hear an owl or a squirrel, and whoa, they're in your tent. You know, yeah. So that was a couple of fun times. When I was working at Elizabeth Street, I was really, I really felt like an old slipper there. I could slip right into. It was just a good spot. You know, we had the town kids and good teachers and good. Joe Ritter was my principal, followed by George Link, and they pretty much let you do what you wanted to do as far as getting the kids. So we had a regular curriculum, you know, where they learned how to tumble and they'd learn how to do marching and exercises and fitness things, and the kids loved all the games and things like that. So, and then the teachers, the younger ones, would grab the ones who were out of line, and they'd say, instead of going to the principal, you're going down and see Mr. Johnson. So they'd bring them down and they'd say, I said, we can't be spanking this many kids. I said. So I'd bark at them and say, get up there and don't be bothering the teacher. And so they'd laugh. But so during the break time, when you're teaching 9 classes of little kids a day, you get tired, especially in that Elizabeth Street gym. It was all bricks.
Oh, yeah.
So the screaming of the high-pitched voices would be enough to drive you nuts, you know? So for lunchtime, they gave me, I don't know, 45 minutes or something. I would go down to the Bill Color Center and have a sandwich with Milt in the back room, right? And we'd laugh and talk, and And Ed Elhoff would show up once in a while, you know, and we would tell jokes, and Milt would say to customers, why don't you come back in 10 minutes? He says, I'm working a special project here with LA. So we left, and then Milt moved. That was, I think that was the Brown newspaper building.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a good building too. I enjoyed running in there with my notes from the games and run upstairs and give them to Al Baker. And that was a really old building with that wooden stairs. That's a tough climb now to get up there, you know? And then I'd keep a copy and run around to the Farmers Gazette and bring them over to old Bill over there. And so they each had a copy until they merged, you know, of primarily who scored, who did what, just results. So then after a while, Elhoff got sick, so he says, I can't make it down to Milts anymore, so I would cut through the fence at Elizabeth Street and go over to his house, and we'd have a sandwich up in his studio, he'd say, you know. He became a real talent, or he had probably talent all his life, but he became really immersed in it as he got older. He's got, you know, beautiful work, and we've got a number of them that we kept. In 1976, they moved me to Ray Middle School. It was just opening up. And it was kind of neat because when I was hired by Mr. Durgee, Ted Durgee, back in '64. And Mr. Ray was the superintendent. And his office, before the district office, was the wrestling room, or the wrestling room was his office. When they moved him out of Baker, the district offices were in the bottom of Baker. And then when I got here, the superintendent's office became the wrestling room, and the nurse's office was right next door. Now it's all one, I guess, I don't know. But anyway, I was always thinking of Mr. Ray. You would think of him like the Pope. He was like, well, when they were superintendents in the old days, they were really up there. They were like the governor. I mean, you respected them, and it was a different. You know, people weren't as folksy as they are now with the administrators. They were on a different level then. So at Ray, I stayed there all day long, and then coached there and ran the Pee Wee wrestling there. And so the Pee Wee wrestling started out to be, we had 15 or 20 kids the first year, and I figured that if we were ever going to be anything, we had to have kids like Little League Baseball to understand the game and, you know, learn the basics. And so it grew from 15 or 20 kids up to 160 kids every Saturday morning. And people would come. We had as many parents there as we did kids. The fan club, which was Ralph Atwater and a few of these guys, set up Joe Lafredo and them, Joe Coleman, and they would set up mothers to bring donuts and sell coffee and donuts for the parents to sit there. And we had like a practice of all the kids at once for 20 or 30 minutes after they did their warm-ups. And then they would break into 8 little teams like Little League Baseball and go to a corner of the mat, and they'd have college names, you know, Cornell or Army or Syracuse, and then they would compete. And then they'd go home. And their assignment when they went home was to come to the varsity wrestling match on Tuesday night or Friday night or whatever it was. And we had a special session for the seating area for them along the mat so they could watch, okay? When I came, everything in Baldwin was basketball, 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 and football, football. And even the girls' basketball then was still 3 girls on the defensive side of the court, 3 on the, you know, and I said, holy crow. So we started having kids come up every year when we could have a bunch of kids graduate. We had a bunch of kids behind them that knew the system from when they were peewees. And we had our own jargon so that the little kids learned to snowplow somebody with their chest. push them over with your chest. We still use that terminology when they were on the varsity, and the other coaches didn't know what we were talking about. You know, the kids would look over and I'd say, "Snow plow them," right? They do it, whatever, you know. Or get the half Nelson, then the other kid would know what to stop. So we would say, "Get the eagle claw," and then just push him over on it and tuck his head under. So the Pee Wees really helped out a lot, and it kept feeding the program through the years. All during that time with the coaching, I coached JV football with Bill Newfang, and he coached 7th and 8th grade wrestling at Derby. He was a great teacher. He was very interested in his community affairs. He really wanted to see the community grow, and he wasn't afraid to bark and talk and give you his opinion, and that was probably the good thing about him, you know what I mean? He didn't cowtail to anybody, and he turned out to be one heck of a teacher and one heck of a coach for the little kids, and he ended up being the varsity coach for a few years at the end of his career, football, yeah. And now they have a bathroom named after him up the high school facility.
Oh, consider bad.
Yeah, a little more than a bathroom.
Yeah, it's a hot dog stand, coffee.
The concession stand, the concession.
Concession. No, it's called the facility. And I'm proud they have it, because you know
I'm
what?
glad they have it too.
If you get a storm, it's a good place to run. You can't go into the bleachers, you get struck by it. So, no, but he was a good man. At the same time all of this was going on, you know, we had at our street corner, as Maureen mentioned earlier, we lived at a very abrupt turn in Route 31 to Downer Street. And since we've lived there, we've had 6 people die there. They would come from Jordan, fall asleep most of the time. Truck drivers, but some people too, and hit the bank.
Right, oh yeah.
And, you know, they would always send investigators out to our house to say, you know, what's going on? I said, what's going on is you need to plow an incline so that if they do make it across that road, they'll end up in the field, right? And so I wrote letters to the DOT and that, and they finally changed the road a little bit and made it more of a yield, right? But you have to stop anyway. And then they put up 3 red blinking lights. And I said, the problem is, they can't see the blinking lights because of the curve in the road. That's when they took the curve out a little bit. But still, you can't see the blinking lights if you're sleeping.
Right.
If you're falling asleep.
Right.
So one night, a truck loaded with government cheese, you know, they have a
Oh yeah.
comes from the Department of Agriculture, they send it to the hospitals and schools and everything. The cheese truck hit, and the cab went into the dirt, and the trailer flopped up over the top of it, and it was all in the field, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie Cohen
It was
trucks.
free cheese, all right.
Well, it was if you were fast, but they had federal marshals there within a couple of hours.
Cheese cops.
They were guarding the cheese. And Charlie Cohencart's ponies were down there sniffing the cheese. So when this would happen, they'd always come and bang on our door, call the police, we got, somebody's hurt, so we'd call, Maureen call, I'd go out there. It got to be so many accidents there that Bob Vandenberg, when he'd come with the fire trucks, he'd say, you know, he was the boss, the chief. Hey, get some of those flares. Leave Leo some flares so that he can, so he's got them here, right? So then the troopers would come and they'd give me some flares. So I had a whole stack of flares, and I'd run to the corner and put the flares up until the trucks got there. So George Newcomb would come and he'd say, "Got the flares up, good," because he was a fire policeman, you know. God, we had lots of laughs. And then if I was out there in my bathrobe, Vandenberg would say, "You look like a girl out there." It was always funny. It was always
And it
fun.
was, but it was before
Serious
you
but
had
fun.
cell phones. You
Yeah.
know, you didn't have
Oh,
cell
no, you
phones,
had
so
cell
they'd
phones
come
back
knocking on
then.
our door, and some of them were bleeding, and they'd be in my
Ow.
foyer,
Yeah.
and I'd go, get out of here.
Yeah.
But
Well,
now,
the
with the
houses
cell
are-
phones, we really don't get too many knocks
No,
on the
well,
door.
no, they're not crashing into the bank as much.
No,
Occasionally, but with the bend in the road now, they curve up and just knock down all the trees.
we wanted them to put big flashing signs
Yeah.
way back
Yeah.
before they approach.
Stop
And
ahead or something.
You know,
Doesn't work on
because,
the parkway.
well, apparently not, but it would have helped, but they didn't want to do that for us. But at least they put a few more lights.
Well,
Yeah.
there are plenty lights, but if you're asleep, it doesn't.
Right.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
So back at Ray's school, I worked there for a few years, and then the superintendent came home and said, "How would you like to work in the district office and be supervisor for phys ed?" And I said, "No, I'm not, no thanks, I'm not interested." I said, "I really like what I'm doing, I like the kids, and I don't want to work with the adults." And he says, "No, you gotta do it." No, I said, "I'm not interested." So a couple of weeks later, the professor from Oswego comes down and he says, "I got to talk to you." He said, "The school wants you to think about being the supervisor of phys ed." I said, "Well, you know, we've got Jim Pelcher and Oak doing that." And they said, "Well, they want you to think about it." So he said, "You know, you ought to do it." He says, "Think about it, because if you get the certification," which meant another year of college, 2 years really,
Yeah.
then you, if you have the ticket and the job ever comes open, you'll be certified and you can get on the bus. He said, if you don't have the ticket, you can't get on the bus. So you ought to get the certification. That'll give you a couple of years to think about it." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I did that. Well, then after I got it, they said, "Okay, Oat's going to be the AD for another year or two. You're going to be the supervisor for phys ed, health, and science, and a few other things." I went, "Oh boy." So I got the job, and my job was really assistant to Pat Davis.
Yes.
When I got the job, Pat Davis,
Oh, miracle.
she was the secretary
Oh,
in my
Fabulous.
office, right? And she was way smarter than I was, and she knew how to run things efficiently. And and we had a terrific relationship, you know, because we got the job and she had an outer office and I had an inner office. And she had worked for years at, I don't remember if it was GE or Carrier, so she was an executive secretary who could type, take shorthand, do all this stuff, and manage the phone, right? And that was barely big, because everybody wanted to come in and talk to Leo about why my daughter's not playing.
oh.
My daughter was all-world basketball when she was in the 3rd grade, and now the stupid coach you have is not even playing her. And so, you know, I did a lot of
A lot of
that.
that.
And Pat would be a great buffer. She said, "Well, Mr. Johnson's really busy right now, and why don't you take a seat," and, you know, and all this. Or we'd have some that would come in screaming because their kid this or whatever. Or I sanctioned one girl one time because she called the coach something terrible, a girl coach, a woman coach. And I said, "You're out, you're not playing for a couple of games." Well, her father came in and he says, "I'm on the Board of Education. Who do you think you are?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "You are on the Board of Education. I apologize, but she's not playing." I said, "She's got to go up there and apologize to that coach and do what you want. And you better take her home and tell her what not to say as a young lady." Ooh. So that didn't go over too good, but I held my ground, and the superintendent backed me up on that. He says, "You know," he says, "we're not going to have that kind of stuff." So, but anyway, that was good. I got that job, worked up there for a while. I had a problem because I'm an old traditionalist. Baldwinsville was supposed to be red and white forever, right? Red and white, red and white. So we got some new younger coaches in, and they said, "We want to be black and red." I said, "Listen,
Oh.
if you want to be black and red, you got to go to Tully or to Chittenden." I said, "We're red and white." So then I had to make some decisions which were not very happy decisions sometimes, because I said, "Our first color is red, our secondary color is white, And the trim color, if you want your letters or numbers to be trimmed, they can be in black, or a little black accent, but no black uniform. Well, I got in hot water because the girls' swim team I wanted them to wear red, so I bought them all red swim tank suits or whatever. They didn't like that because you could see through the red when it got wet, and they didn't want people to see their body parts or whatever. I say, you know what, nobody's looking at your body parts anyway, you're swimming, and they've got underliners up here and down here. Well, they had a campaign against Leo. They wanted black swimsuits. Oh, I fought that for a while and lost, you know. They got their black swimsuits. And then they called me into the Board of Education. I wanted to know why I was fighting. I said, listen, when I came here, we didn't even wear swimsuits in that pool. 1964, the boys had gym class. Everybody swam naked.
That's the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the girls.
Well, I don't know, I never went to the girls.
The girls had those one size fits all.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Stretchy
That's
things.
what I did.
Yeah.
So, but they told us it was more healthy because the lint from the bathing suits would clog the pool filters or something. That's what Oak told me, I don't know. But anyway, you had to take gym and you had to go and swimming, and you couldn't graduate unless you could pass swimming, you know.
That's right, yeah.
So that you know, I did that for a while, and then when I got to be the AD, we started to work hard with Pelcher Stadium. It wasn't called Pelcher Stadium at the beginning, but when Jim Pelcher died, he was 49 years old, and we were playing a benefit basketball game against the SU football team. And I thought it was supposed to be a comedy. We were playing basketball for him. The place was packed, filled to the brim. And he took a two-handed set shot around halftime and made it. And then he knelt down like this, like the thinker, you know, on that statue, and fell over. So his wife and all his kids were right there. Everybody was there, packed. So I don't know if you were there, but I said, I got the microphone, I said, Coach Pelcher, I've had a problem, he swallowed his gum or something. I said, well, the game is going to be over tonight, thank you for coming, let's leave this way. They came, picked him up, he was gone, right? And so, 49, that impacted me a lot. So then, they named the stadium after him, honored him with that. And then about, I don't know how many years later, I'm at an athletic directors meeting in Camillus, and the sheriff comes in and he says, Mr. Johnson, go to the hospital. Right now, Mr. Arcaro had a heart attack. And I said, geez.
Yeah.
I said, he just gave us his letter of resignation. He's going to retire come June. He didn't make it. He died at 54. So I'm talking to Pat Davis in the office one day, and I said, you know, I'm quitting when I'm 55. These, you know, things happen in threes. I said, those are my two buddies.
Yeah.
I said, I'm out of here. So when it became 1994, I put in my letter of resignation and decided to try something else. Turn a new chapter in my life. And I quit the school and went to work for a company to sell tumbling mats, wall protection, and wrestling mats, and things like that. Did that for quite a few years. And took off sailing so that I could spend more time with her. And we've been doing it ever since, so it's been good. The only thing I can think of that I wanted to mention was how some days when I'm walking down to the Beeville Diner or whatever, I can see in my mind's eye the transition of Baldwinsville from when I was a young guy till now, and mostly in the buildings and the layout of the streets and things like that, how you'd make a corner at the Four Corners and you'd run into Tappan Lumber or Lathrop and those guys, or you go down to Van Wee Chevy or the Key Bank had a nice corner office where the Masonic Temple is, and then they built that screwy building that doesn't fit the street to get it in the lot. And I didn't know why they did that, but then that's where the canal came underneath it and the back, so they couldn't fill in and build the building straight. And I used to remember going down by Morris Machine Works, and they would blow a whistle or a horn, and the guys would all come out and sit on the sidewalk for lunch. And that was good. So if I was walking down there, then, hey, how you gonna be this week? You guys we gonna win the football game? Hey Johnson, you gonna win this or whatever? I said, so it was always fun talking to those guys. And a lot of their kids were on our teams, so that was good fun. We used to go to the A&P, which is now the Village Hardware Store, something like that. And the fun of going to the A&P was always walking by Palmer's Diner and smelling all those pies. See, you had a fan blowing out, you could smell them all the way halfway up the street. So there's lots of changes, and I was talking with Maureen about how our community has transitioned from a nice little rural town to a suburbia. And that was because of primarily 690. And you know, when we had 690, we started to build Seneca Knolls, and we started to build Radisson, was where Linda Meyer and I used to go hunting all the time, and now it's houses. They built Seneca Estates, and you know, 2 shopping centers, well, which we didn't
About
need
to be
to.
one shopping center.
Yeah, whatever it is, we don't know what it's gonna be. And
Our mayor knows more about it.
yeah, so the
News at 11 on that.
The only thing I forgot to mention was that my first job was, I told you, Durkee and Elizabeth Street School, but on Fridays, our Carol and I had to go out and teach out at, I taught at Lysander School, and he taught at Plainville Elementary. So we would work our schools in town, and then at 1 o'clock we'd have to go out there to give those kids a
Those
job.
one roomers at that time?
Lysander was 2, and I think Plainville was 2, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
And when I come out to Lysander, you know, it was a long ride. You have to go up the Lamps and Corners and way out. And Mrs. Beebe and Mrs. Foster and those ladies would have the kids lined up on the fence. And they'd see my car coming and they'd start chanting, Jim, 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 Jim. And when I get out of the car, the kids would call me Coach Jim. They thought, she'd say, you have Jim on Friday. They thought my name was Jim. So, and some of the kids in those classes, Bruce Stebbins and those kids were little, you know.
Well, now you know what to call him, Frank or Jim.
Yeah.
Frank or Jim.
That's right. But anyway, that was really good, and we used to go out, I'd come home and take her out there, we'd go to the Lysander Hotel, fish fry, and it was really, Lysander Hotel was a good place.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was a good place. It was always packed. Well, it was around the
You were too
corner.
young.
No, I didn't, probably just
Yeah.
didn't get to the high spots like that.
So, but anyway, so that's about it, unless Maureen has anything to add, or if anybody wants to ask any questions, we can,
Well, Maureen, you had some things that you've done here in Ballsville too, correct?
Oh, a few, yeah.
Yeah.
What was nice is that we love Baldwinsville.
still do.
Yes, that's what I said, we love Baldwinsville. It's a wonderful place to raise our children. The the education system here was wonderful. My kids were very happy here. Thank goodness 2 of them remained here. One, where Bob Gates lived, and yeah, it's a wonderful place. I helped with the cheerleading, was cheerleading coach. We won a few championships. It was wonderful, wonderful girls. And helped with the tennis. But I just think it was a wonderful place to live, and I hope I just live many more years. The people are wonderful here in Baldwinsville. And now this wonderful mayor, and the first lady. I mean, what more could we ask for?
Right.
But, and I'm very blessed to have Leo. I mean, we met at college and had 5 beautiful children. So, and now we have 14 grandchildren.
Wow.
So,
Merry Christmas.
yeah, wonderful time.
The first job you had out of college was East Syracuse?
Yeah, I was there for 4 years,
Okay,
and,
and then came over here.
yeah, and while I was there, I used to work on the railroad before I married Maureen, at night,
Oh.
because we didn't have a lot of money then, you know, I was making big bucks.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
you wouldn't
getting,
have made much at all.
yeah, I was getting $200 a year for coaching wrestling, 28 cents an hour, and, so I'd work on the railroad at night, and the railroad went, you know, where 690 is now, that's where the railroad went.
Yeah.
And they have by the Time Warner Building across the
Yeah,
street,
yeah.
there was a loading dock.
Yeah.
And that was my station. And so I'd go there and work from 11 at night to 7 in the morning.
Whoa.
And
Then get up and teach.
Then you have to teach, yeah.
and then the trains would be coming in from New York, and I was the guy that loaded the freight and the mail bags, And so then they'd say, okay, you got a break now, we got a train from Chicago coming. And that would be the same, you'd take the bags and take them off the train, you know.
Your exercise program.
Yeah, and it was funny because sometimes we would get tired, so in order to take a sleep, it was cold. So it was night. We'd sleep in some of those mailbags.
You're lucky you didn't get picked up.
Well, till we could hear the train coming.
Shipped out.
Yeah, I was always worried about some of those big guys that were gonna pull the string and throw me out. Wake up in the morning in Chicago or something. Funny times.
Yeah.
But that's that, and
Anybody got any other questions?
Well, one's a question about truth or fiction. I've heard stories about John or Carol that when he was doing some of that
True.
traveling and teaching, that he wound up going to a school in the Jordan Elbridge School District, or probably it was Elbridge at the time, and taught there like a half a year before he realized it wasn't involved in the district.
I don't know that because John was older than I.
It could have been.
I mean, it sounds like something John would do.
Yeah, and they probably offered him a Pepsi for it.
Right, right.
But the only school I could think of would have been Plainville. He might have went right on by to Meridian Elementary.
Maybe.
You know, because Jordan's pretty far. Jordan's pretty far out. And I don't know, maybe the people know, is there a school at Memphis? Was there ever one room in Memphis?
I think there was. I think there was something in the Messenger or something about a school being there.
But the Lysander School was high class. It was really a sharp place. It was on the first floor was first, second, and third grade, and fourth, fifth, and sixth were upstairs. And I think when they closed that school, those kids all came to Elizabeth
They
Street
did.
and Eldon, I think. Some went to Eldon. But it was they were good teachers there. The kids, they could learn everything. It was like going to prep school. There were only
Yeah.
5 or 6 in each grade level.
Oh, beautiful, yeah.
So the teacher had a lot of time to devote attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was no sneaking away and saying I didn't do my homework. It was, you did your homework, or you stayed there, you know.
So your first year as AD was when we were sharing the office with you, right? Because I remember out in the trailer still in the back was
Yeah.
Sally.
Yeah.
Was it Sally?
Yeah. But you were there as you came in.
With Dr. Anastasia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I got Oates' job, he said, I'll get my stuff out of the trail. I said, I'm not going on that trail. I said, there's monsters that live under that trail. I said, he said, well, where are you going to go? I said, I'm going to take Cooper's office.
Oh,
And he did.
was he the business manager?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because
And he did.
they were up front there,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I made
Red curtain.
red
Curtains. Red and black or red and white?
Red and white.
excuse me,
There
was
Trim.
the tiebacks that I did were black and white ribbon.
Ah, okay.
Maybe that's
Touching all
what,
bases.
maybe
I
that's
wonder
what
where those are. They probably burn them.
Yeah, because Leo and Pat played matchmaker for the mayor and the first lady back.
Oh,
Well,
did they?
Yeah, well, she asked me, she came up and she said, you know anything about this guy Dick Clark? And I went, oh my God. And I said, well,
I remember what you told me.
yeah, I told you. a
Good
couple
old
things.
days. They were wonderful
Yeah,
days.
it was good fun,
They were
good
good
fun.
days.
Where did you ever come up with all the traditions with the wrestling? I mean, the way they came out, and I mean, it always looked so, I mean, I would be ready to go out and tackle people watching the wrestlers come out. And then the bell and all that stuff. I mean, you were a kind of master of sight, weren't you?
Well, no, not really, but it was just different ideas. And you know, I used to I would go around the country after I was coaching for a while and give talks about this. And I'd say, whatever your offense or your defense or whatever your philosophy or it is, you've got to treat it like a garden. It can't be the same every year. You can't do you've got to weed the garden, and things that are not working, pull them out. And things that are working, put some new innovations in. So when I go and see these different matches around, we developed a self-confidence in the kids and said, you know, even if you're not a good wrestler, the kid from the other town doesn't know you're not.
Right.
You're wearing the red for Beeville, and stand up proud, you know, hold your head up high, and walk with a purpose. We used to tell the kids that a match this is not fun right now. This is a business game. Tonight, you're going to business. You're going to work. Get out there and do your, we'll have fun after. We can have pizza and laugh and cry and everything after. But for this hour or two, it's straight business. And you do what you've learned to do, what you've practiced to do, and don't worry what the other guy's going to be doing, because if you're doing your thing, he's not going to have time to do his thing, you know, and never give up. And we used to pride ourselves on the fact that at the end of the year, we'd write down how many wins the kids had. You had 12 wins and 2 losses, 3 wins and 4 losses, whatever it was. But we would never give up. So at the end of the year, we would say, how many times did you get pinned? The whole team would, if we had 3 pins against us, 3 individual pins, which are like knockouts, that was huge. And we would never publicize it. We would never tell Neil Kerr, we wouldn't tell him, we wouldn't tell anybody. Because we didn't want them to put that in the paper, that it was a secret. And you know, you could be beating our kid to death. And if he didn't get knocked out or pinned, I'd write in the paper, the Al Baker story, that he was a defensive hero. Because he never gave up. He never gave up, and he fought and ended the match losing, but he saved us 2 points saved his team 2 points by not getting pinned. And nobody figured that out. And then, as I told you, we had the code words that were from Pee Wee's. And we would say some of those code words in a big match. You know, like if I'm competing with Dick here, and I know that if I get tangled with him, he might beat me. So if I didn't tangle with him, the referees would say, you're backing off, you're stalling, you're avoiding the game, penalty. So we would have a term called the Hollywood, which is acting, moving. So I said, if you want to engage, go after him. If we give you the word Hollywood, make believe you're going after him, but don't go after him. So when this coach retired from North Syracuse, he goes, you know, we had some great battles with you guys. He said, we worked hard against your moves, and we couldn't never get that Hollywood move. And I'd say, that was a heck of a move, and it's a real secret. We're not telling you. Yes.
I know, you're right.
You had some great years, though.
We did.
Good, wonderful.
We had some good years.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Evo made the papers a lot.
A lot.
The
Yeah,
wrestling team was really, really good.
well, you know,
I don't know how many state championships,
won
I
some.
forget.
yeah, whatever. Wrestling is different than a team sport, but
Right.
it is a team sport.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of individuals. It's like the Army. You know, you have tanks and guns and Navy, and the wrestlers are all different kids, but they're fighting for one team thing. So we would win a lot of matches with average kids because the other team didn't know that, you know, they weren't excel athletes. They were just hard workers and good fighters, you know, and they were disciplined. We knew that if anybody took us into the overtime of the third quarter, our kids would triumph because we would run the stairs and we were in such good shape. You'd see them running all over town and with their red leggings on in the middle of the winter or whatever, you know. And when they called school off for a snow day or something, we still had practice. And, you know, I don't know, we would practice at the Tri-County Mall,
Yeah.
in the old Day Brothers or something, on the rug. And, you know, we had to have to keep a lookout so that somebody wouldn't come down and say, you can't be in here. But the kids knew. They knew 2 o'clock, Day Brothers, you know, stuff like that. Or you go to LaPorte's attic, or,
Oh, yeah.
you know, or Pickard's cellar, you know. And we had a handout for them because if there was a snow day or a blizzard and you couldn't get to practice, you had to do this in your house. You had to run up and down the cellar stairs or up and down the stairs 20 times. You had to do 30 push-ups. You had to do this so that when you came back, you were ready to go, you know, and you didn't miss out on your practice. So it was good. And we had a lot of laughs, you know. And we were very proud of the fact that in the high school, we only could seat 1,100 in the gym, if that. So when we got to be successful, Hope was thrilled because he'd call up and say, we're gonna move this match over to Liverpool High School, they hold 2,000. He was getting more dollars, you know. And then we had to move bigger matches to the War Memorial, and then bigger matches to Manley Fieldhouse. And when we'd go to other schools, they'd call up and say, well, you know, you're pretty good in your area, but we don't know if you're that good, so come on down here and wrestle us. So we would go, you know, to community college in Canandaigua and wrestle Canandaigua. They had lots of things, and we ended up beating them. We ended up beating
Port Jervis.
Port Jervis. We went all the way down there, and went to places in Albany or Utica and different places. Union, Endicott.
That was a big one.
Yeah, they had a win streak of 66 in a row. We had 95 in a row or something, and so they produced John Fox wrote the big thing for, he said, UE will finish Baldwinsville. They didn't.
Went down to the last match.
Dougie Ecker.
Dougie Ecker.
I moved him up to heavyweight. He was going against a state football player, 35 pounds bigger than him. And Dougie's, you know, I'd say, Doug, don't fool around. This guy will flatten you. He's really big. Just do what we tell you. He's doing it. So he's winning by 1 or 2 points, and he's looking over at me, and he's going with one arm. He's going, and I'm going, hang on to him.
That's Doug.
And I can't watch it. I'm out in the hall, pacing. When it comes down to, I just have to go.
It was fun, though. It was good fun.
It was a wonderful time in our lives, really. It was harder on him than it was me.
I can
But
remember
then-
watching you a lot of matches when you were pregnant.
Oh,
And you'd be standing there, you'd be stopping there, going, no, Maureen, no. Don't encourage this baby to come right now.
That had to be Brian.
That's all right, you got somebody can do it.
That's right. Frank could take care of it.
right. Hey, Frank, I forgot.
You don't have a kid named Frank either, do you?
No.
Frank from Lock Street.
Baldwinsville's been very, very good to us.
Well, thank you very much,
Well, we
everybody.
thank you,
Oh,
because
you
this
great,
is
yeah,
wonderful,
this is so
thank you very much.
And next time we'll go to the retail diner, right? And
Good,
sit in the booth and do it.
Now, our next one, in case anybody, you know, everyone knows, you can have a copy of this for $15, which goes to, of course, PAC-B.
Yeah.
But our next program is going to be in September.
Ah, okay.
And I'm sure we're going to have some good ones coming up. I know them, I just read off the top of my head, can't think of who the next one is. I can't remember
Don't
whether
look at me,
it's
I don't
Chuck
remember.
or, you know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But anyways, we've always had, and the reason we keep doing this is because people love Baldwinsville, as I do, of course. That's how come I keep making sure people come like you and do these programs.
Well, you do a
And
great job.
they're wonderful to see on TV.
Well, you know, that was another reason why we wanted to tape too. There's so many people that can't get out.
Yeah,
Coniford and things like that, can't come here for these.
yeah,
They'll say afterwards, oh, I saw so-and-so, you
yeah.
know. So it is important.
Yeah, a lot of
And
people
thank you,
watching.
Colin, and PAC 98.